right, should we get started? Everybody have a fabulous lunch. So, I'm Rob Tiffany, and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about Windows Phone 8 in the enterprise here. So I do mobile strategy work at Microsoft. I've been around for a while. I've been in kind of a lot of our different mobile organizations over the years. Do you remember the Pocket PC and CE and all that fun stuff and Windows Mobile, and now we had Windows Phone 7 and now we have Windows Phone 8. And so it's definitely been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. So part of the big thing now, I think, with Windows Phone 8, after about 2.5 years with Phone 7 and 7.5, where we kind of restarted our phone platform. You know, we had Windows Mobile all the years, had all the enterprise features, and then we did Windows Phone 7 that was going more for the consumer and was missing all those enterprise features. And I certainly heard about that from all of you and all the CEOs and CIOs of all the big companies around the world. So Phone 8 is definitely bringing it all back. If any of you like to write code and want to learn to develop for Phone 8, right here at the bottom, my colleagues, Andy Wigley and I, did this 20 hours of videos, this jumpstart, that covers pretty much everything you would want to learn for developing all different kinds of things for Phone 8. So you definitely give that a watch. We really did that in 2 days, getting up super early, and it was grueling. So I have to plug my new book. I just came out with a book on tablets. I know that doesn't seem very much like the phone, but anyway, I'll give away a book. If anybody in this room likes to, it's kind of a mixture of old and new. It gets you building apps for business on Windows 8 tablets, but it also shows you how to use some of our old technology that maybe you're already using in your enterprise today to accomplish some of that. So I'll ask a question at the end of the session from things that I talk about. And so if you happen to remember and you're interested in doing tablet development, you can raise your hand and maybe you'll get a book. You never know. So let's see, what are we going to talk about? So we're going to cover a lot of the hardware innovations that we've made available now on Phone 8. I'm going to talk a lot about security. I'm going to talk a lot about device management. And the reason for that is after 2 years of having arrows shot at me from every executive in the world, that's what they want to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then again, you know, this is kind of like the kickoff session for our Windows Phone track. I'll talk about some of the things you maybe already know. I'll talk about a lot of the productivity features built into Phone 8 that you can use in the enterprise. Touch on mobile development. And then deployment and things like that. Obviously, throughout the rest of the week, we'll have deep dives on individual topics. We'll have really deep sessions that you can go to learn more about device management, about mobile development, things like this. But the great thing here that this is just supposed to be a high-level, 200-level session so that you're informed if you aren't already, and so you can have a good business discussion with your customers, with your boss, with your executives about Windows Phone in the enterprise. So let's take off here. Now to start out, and if you go to other Windows Phone sessions throughout this week, you'll see this slide in here a bunch. The key takeaway here, and I'll touch on this already in my session, is kind of the idea of this consistent experience across all of our platforms. You know, having the same modern user interface, the programming model's the same, a lot of sharing across, whether it's Xbox, it's a tablet, it's a phone, it's your all-in-one. And then following along with the sharing, besides a consistent user interface and familiarity, having these apps, whether it's our Office apps or Link, all working on all our different platforms the same as line of business apps, and then device management. You know, if you certainly heard a lot about this morning. If you went to Brad Anderson's keynote this morning talking about a lot of the things we're doing around device management, you certainly heard a lot about that for covering device management for everything you have, your PCs, your tablets, iOS, things like that. So let's get started here. So the first thing I want to talk about is just the idea, the concept around how we have this shared Windows core across all these platforms. And you're probably wondering, what's that all about? And so the big takeaway here is that we just got the good old Windows NT kernel that everyone knows and loves, and we have it running everywhere now. And so besides servers and besides desktops, you've got it on tablets and phones and RT devices. So there's going to be a lot of things I'll talk about in this session where we, on the phone platform, we get a lot of great things for free because it's real Windows running on the phone. So to give you a little bit of history that you may not know about, you might be wondering, so how did we get to, because it seems strange, how did we get to big Windows fitting onto a phone or Windows on the RT device, And so the way it worked was back in 2008, Microsoft Research started working on a secret kind of skunkworks, underground project, and it was called Experiment 19. It was the code for it. And basically what they wanted to set out to prove was find out, could they get a version of the NT kernel and .NET, the CLR, Common Language Runtime, running on ARM-based processors? And could they do that, and how would it compare with, at the time, what we had was Windows CE, was our embedded operating system that runs on ARM, and the .NET Compact Framework. And so they had this secret project in Microsoft Research. And in the end, what they found, and they used a version of Windows kernel, MinWin, that you may have heard of over the years. But it was a huge success. They found that they could get that NT kernel running on ARM, .NET, and it was actually faster than little tiny Windows CE and the Compact Framework. And because of the success of that secret project, what started after that ended up what you see today with Windows Phone 8 running big Windows and Windows RT. Because if you think about the two platforms we have that have the most in common, it's actually Windows RT and the phone, because they're both designed for ARM processors and that same subset. So a little bit of history there, but that's kind of how we got there. So the benefits, I kind of think of three different constituencies that benefit from the fact that we have this shared core running everywhere, running on big servers, running on devices. So the first one is consumers. They get a lot of choice, and they don't get choice because someone built 3 or 4 totally different types of computing platforms. They're all the same. And so whether it's one of those big all-in-one computers or a tablet or a device, it all shares the same heritage. Developers, obviously that's an obvious one that's really clear what the benefit is, that getting to that code reuse, sharing code. I'm building on the phone, I'm building a C# or a VB app, that's using XAML to describe the user interface. And then that same app, I can reuse 80 to 90% of that code, all the business logic, probably just about everything except for maybe the user interface and kind of the navigation I might want to change for the tablet or other platforms. So that huge code reuse is the big benefit for developers. And it's a big benefit for companies too, because when you want to target multiple platforms, this lets you do it much faster because you're not using a different programming language and different tools and different everything each time. You're using the same over and over and over again. And then, of course, that lowers risk to your project. So faster to market, lower risk, it's all good. And then with hardware manufacturers, they can pivot and easily switch between things. So a hardware manufacturer could have a lot of experience building laptops, RT devices, and they may just decide tomorrow that they want to be a smartphone manufacturer. Well, that seemed crazy at one time, but it's actually pretty easy now. And so they could instantly pivot and use the same technology and the same things they learned from big Windows to do stuff for Windows Phone 8. So when we talk about hardware innovations, that might seem like a strange thing for a software Microsoft guy to be talking with because we don't make the phone, but we almost did, and we almost do. So going back in time, when we were coming out of the Windows Mobile days, we had a model for devices that was actually pretty much the same as what Android uses today, actually. So we would create the operating system and throw it over the wall to the hardware manufacturers, and they would spend about 3 months modifying, customizing everything. They'd build device drivers. So we gave them kind of half of the stack, and they'd do the other half, and they would change it. Then they would give it to the mobile operators like Vodafone or Orange or whoever, and they would modify it. And so maybe 6 months later, after we had shipped Windows Mobile whatever, version 5 or 6, you would finally see a phone, and it didn't look anything like what we created. It was totally customized. The battery life wasn't as good. But mobile operators and OEMs wanted to differentiate themselves. And we thought it was a good idea back then. We thought we were giving people choice. We had different screen sizes, different CPUs, different everything. We thought it was good. Keyboards on the, but in the end, it caused a lot of fragmentation, and it caused a lot of problems. And also, we allowed so many different hardware manufacturers to play in this game. The quality wasn't always consistent. I remember we had to fire a bunch of hardware manufacturers because they made us look bad. So we decided to go, when we kind of restarted with Phone 7, we decided to create a specification that accounted for over 95 or even higher % of what is got to be in the platform. So we created this thing called the chassis specification, kind of like a car chassis, an auto. And so that we defined everything. So it was almost like us building our own iPhone, but not quite. We still wanted Samsung and Nokia and HTC and all of our friends to be able to participate. But we didn't want the wide variability in quality. So we did the chassis spec. And so because of that, and because it's real Windows and the same kernel that runs on servers, dual core, not a big deal, it's good. But we see phones out there with quad core and even more. So as we move into the future, it will not be a hard, difficult engineering effort for us to deliver quad core or 8 core or 64 core if someone ever wants that in the future. It's because we already have that capability built into the kernel already. So it'll be easy for us to deliver that kind of technology and those advancements in that. Whereas some of our competitors, it might be difficult retooling their operating system to do that. These are our screen sizes. Most of them right now are 720p. Some are the 1280 by 768, I think, like the Nokia Lumia 920 is that. SD cards, that's not very exciting to talk about. We used to have SD cards in Windows Mobile, then we kind of lost them in Windows Phone 7 for a while, and now they're back. But they're just for media. They're just for pictures, music, things like that. They're not designed to store secure information or run. Apps won't run from them, actually. If you have an app, you can sideload. If you have an app on the SD card, you put it in, it'll install it onto the main flash part of the phone. And then, of course, we have NFC. And so we enforce and we guarantee that, and I could go on for hours telling you the entire list of the specification that everyone has to follow. And then they can innovate above that. But we guarantee all these, so the developer has a consistent, they know if they develop for one phone, it's going to work on every phone, just like the iPhone, right? That's kind of what we were going for. We want that consistency like you have with the iPhone. We didn't want the Wild West like we had with Windows Mobile or we have with Android today. So if you've been using Phone 7 or 7.5 or 8, you're familiar with the live tiles. You're also familiar that Windows 8 adopted our tile and Metro paradigm, and I guess we don't call it that anymore. So probably the biggest changes in Phone 8, we added more tile sizes, but that sounds very superficial. We didn't just have tiles and stretched them out or made them bigger. If you're a developer building a Phone 8 app and you're inside Visual Studio developing it, you'll see 3 different tile sizes in the tool. And you will create icons or text or different things for different sizes as appropriate. And so in your app, in the background, can surface that information in the background for the user. Or you can use our push notifications from the cloud to update those tiles. So there may be some cases where you can pull your phone out of your pocket and maybe you don't have to launch the app. The information you're looking for might already be on the tile. You can pin whatever you want onto the screen. You can pin websites, so our IE10 browser, all the different sites you might have them as favorites, but you can also pin them as a tile onto the home screen as well. It's very, very customizable. All right, so let's talk about security, since this is probably the biggest change for Phone 8 and probably the biggest request from our enterprise customers. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to go through a number of slides on security. I'm going to start at the hardware first. And again, it's as a reminder, since we control the specification, we actually control the hardware, even though we don't actually make the device. Samsung might be making it, but they follow our rules. And the same goes for Windows 8, big Windows as well. So one thing is we don't want malware getting onto the platform, viruses, things like that, because that'll kill adoption of the phone by consumers and it'll never get into the enterprise. So the first thing we did is we used this Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, UEFI. It's kind of, a lot of you have heard of it maybe. It's the successor. It's the replacement for the old PC BIOS that we use when you boot up a computer. Except it's different. It creates a secure hardware environment for you. And it does a few things for us. So during that boot process, right at the very beginning, as the phone is booting up, it's doing some checks. It does this secure boot and trusted boot. And so what it's doing is it's checking. It validates the operating system. The operating system, the device drivers, the apps, everything has to be digitally signed by Microsoft, or the phone will not boot up and it will not run. And so during that boot process, this UEFI secure boot is doing all these checks. And so it's checking for digital sign from us, or it won't load the operating system. The trusted boot part is doing checksums to see if anything is tampered with the operating system, and it sees if anything. So a lot of times when people like to jailbreak their iPhone or they root their Android device and getting another OS image on there so that they can do more things, unfortunately, you won't get to have that fun on our platform because those things will not boot up. You can't go to XDA developers or places like that and download different ROM images for our phone anymore. So that's not bad. That's bad news for hackers, but it's good news for the enterprise, because the enterprise is not interested in phones that can be compromised that way. Because as soon as you put a rootkit or jailbreak a phone, then you have no control over anything, over the security. Because I know there's a lot of mobile device management packages out there that people use, and the feedback I get from them is when their device management agent is on a phone that has been jailbroken, the jailbroken phone sends incorrect, it misreports information back to the server. It lies to the server, telling it everything is okay when it's actually not. So let's go up a little higher. So you can't be in the enterprise unless you have fully encrypted devices these days. That's just kind of, and so with phone 7 and 7.5, we didn't have this. We used to have it in Windows Mobile, and I heard about it every day. And so that's the first thing we did, was make sure that we have a fully encrypted device as being the #1 security list. But there's differences in how you can do security. And so we did it a little differently than some of our competitors did it. So I don't expect everyone in the room to know about crypto algorithms and things like that. But let's just say that when you're encrypting something, you create you have to create a key, right? And you have a password and a salt value to create that stuff, just to get into it a little bit. And so some competing platforms to ours, Android, uses the password as the key. And so that if the key to encrypt the device is 1111, it's probably not very strong encryption. It could be easily broken. We don't want to leave it up to the user to figure out what's a good strong password and encryption key, because people shouldn't have to know about things like that. So we do it. We use our TPM chips. Has anybody heard of a TPM, trusted platform? All right. So in your most secure laptops that you have at your company, they have TPM chips, and they work with BitLocker, and every one of our phones has a TPM chip. And so that was a critical element for us, is to make our phones as secure as the most secure desktop or laptops using TPM technology. And so we use our BitLocker technology to encrypt it. We create the key in hardware. There's this ARM trust zone area in the system on the chip that the phone runs on, and that's where the TPM is. And so the keys and things like that, it's all done in hardware, and it's all stored there. So infinitely more secure than allowing a user to come up with what they think is the best way to do it. The encryption is turned on or off. You can either use Exchange Active Sync to push down the policy to tell the phone to turn it on and off if you use Exchange Server, or we have device management interfaces built into the phone, and so you could use Windows Intune, but if you use AirWatch or Mobile Iron or Afaria or some of the other mobile device management players, they all work with that. And so from the IT pros perspective, you can control it that way. I mentioned SD cards at the beginning. They're not for secure anything. They're just for media and stuff like that. So if that's a problem, though, at your enterprise, we have the device management interfaces so you can turn off and disable the SD card. Our Security Response Center. So people kind of know what Patch Tuesday is and Windows Update and pushing updates to fix problems with the operating system or security or zero-day threats. So we have that same capability in our phone too. So if our security people find a threat around the world at any time that could hurt your device, we can automatically push a patch over the air to devices, no matter who the mobile operator is around the world, to update your device. You don't have to wait for your mobile operator to approve it. There are other things, like if it's an update to the operating system, if it's another version, then yes, sometimes the mobile operators do their testing and things like that. But in the case of a security deal, we can do it immediately. FIPS certification, does anybody know what that is? Yeah, it's a U.S. thing, actually. It's a certification of the U.S. government and military to certify encryption algorithms to verify that they're real and they actually work the way they're supposed to. And so it's actually a big deal for us to get FIPS certification. BlackBerry has FIPS certification. You expect those it's the highest level. It's kind of a checkbox from government and military entities. If you have it, then your device will be trusted anywhere. So we are halfway through. We already got through phase 1. We're going through the process right now with big Windows 8. And we expect to be certified and done probably in the next month or two at the very latest. So now let's go a little bit higher up the stack on security. And let's talk about the apps themselves. And what can we do to help protect the apps at a higher level? So the app platform. We made sure the app platform helps protect your data by default, over and above just enforcing as password and then having an encrypted device. So each app runs in this chamber security model. So how many people are familiar with containers, secure encrypted containers like Good and things like that, and different MDM providers providing, you may be aware of the new BlackBerry 10 has something called Balance. You have Samsung's working on something called Knox. Kind of this idea of business and personal encrypted, a shielded area. So part of the inherent part of our platform, though, is each of our apps is already in their own container by default. And so the apps can't talk to each other. They can't, via memory, interprocess communication. They're totally isolated from each other, and they're isolated from the phone itself and the operating system and the browser. And so they can't attack each other or the platform. They cannot elevate their own privileges and break out of their container to do things they're not allowed to do. Also, at the file system level, they can't see. So if I have an Android device, I can pull up the file, kind of a file manager tool, and I can see all the files on the operating system. The data at rest on our phones, each application is allowed to have their own file storage, isolated storage area. Well, the only way to get to those files is through that app. There's no file system. There's nothing you can go at to see everybody else's files, to attack them or modify them or something like that, or hack them. So there's no way to tamper with them because of that. For public apps in the public store for consumers, we followed the Apple model. We're kind of on the side with Apple, kind of like what they do with the iPhone, instead of being like where Android does with their Google Play store, right? So we test all the apps. And not only testing them for viruses and malware, but we're doing quality testing. We have this whole test kit. And we actually give you the test kit, too, so you can use it yourself before even submitting your apps to our store. So the test kit also is looking for quality problems, buffer overflows, memory leaks, all kinds of things, to ensure that we have the best quality apps into the store. A little bit later, I'm going to talk about your own internal store and building apps in your enterprise that don't have to go through our store. And you'll be able to get all the same capabilities and tools and things you need to do that for your own apps. So I'm going to go a little bit higher now, deeper into the app themselves. And this is a little more, this is pretty much focused on developers here, but it's stuff that makes sense in the enterprise. They're capabilities we give to the developers to help further bulletproof themselves. So imagine this scenario. Lots of people think that, once they have the encrypted device and they're enforcing a password and they've done all these great things, that they're as secure as possible. But what about the scenario where I'm logged into my phone and I've logged in and it doesn't matter that my device is encrypted. I'm already in. I can see things, I can do things. If I lose my phone in this state, then someone, a bad actor, someone who's not wanting to do anything good, can get access to things. So this is where I'm a firm believer in applications taking care of their own security. So this phone can't join the domain. There's no IPsec or things like that like you have on a managed PC, a laptop or tablet, things like that. But we do give you things to help the apps themselves take responsibility for their own security. So, for instance, we make it very simple in our .NET technology to have those apps, if you want. Not everybody does this, but the apps themselves, kind of in their own little islands, can prompt users for domain credentials. They can use those credentials to encrypt their own data at rest. We have this AES encryption, AES managed, AES-256 encryption. We make it simple to encrypt their own data at rest. You could use the credentials that people are using for their domain username and password to create your own encryption key inside the app and encrypt the data. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't have to do that because the device is already encrypted. I'm talking about that scenario where you're already in the device. And so you have double envelope security now. You have another layer of encryption at the app level. And so a person would not be able to launch the app. They wouldn't know the credentials. They couldn't get in there. Other things you can do, I don't know if you've ever heard the concept of a session attack, but think of a website. You know how like if you go to a website and e-commerce or something, and if you kind of walk away for 20 minutes, it might time out and take you back to the login screen. It's not a bad idea for your critical business apps to implement some similar functionality. Just depends on how paranoid you are, right? But the idea of limiting that exposure. So what if I left my phone in the taxi and I'm logged in and I'm already in an app too and it's got secure business data? Session attacks, after a period of time, you can have it automatically go back to the login screen. There's all kinds of things you can do. You may have heard of the term geofencing, where you're using the GPS or cell tower triangulation to say that if the app is not in a particular place, an area, a warehouse, if it goes somewhere else, then it won't work anymore. So these are just different ideas you can use. We empower you to do these in your own apps. Obviously, there's other third-party tools that build on rewrap apps and do all that kind of stuff as well. Obviously, take care of your own data in transit. Use the SSL, the TLS technology that's built in there. You can't always rely, and I'm talking about any phone here. I'm not talking about Windows Phone, but any phone, any platform. Assuming someone else is going to take care of the security for you, like a particular VPN concentrator or working with, there's so many different products on the market and so many different technologies. I find it's better that the developer take responsibility for their data in transit as well. And then, of course, as I said, you can prompt the app can prompt the user for credentials, and then we make it easy then to do. We have NTLM to authenticate, basic authentication, and then, of course, so it can hit your IIS servers if you're exposing web services maybe to the internet or little small web sites. The same kind of things you're doing today inside your company. You can, you'll just pass those credentials when you make those web service calls, and then it authenticates with Active Directory. And we make it easy to do that with your on-premise stuff, or we can use OAuth and SAML tokens and things like that for the cloud. So now the next thing is like, okay, well, what are some of the best ideas about how to, I mentioned publishing that web services and websites out to the internet for users, for devices, because I don't want to always require someone to make a VPN connection first in order to have a secure thing. So how do you do that? So one of the things we do at Microsoft to avoid people always having to set up a VPN connection, whether it's a laptop or anything, is securely publishing the apps and web services from inside your data center out to the internet where they can be consumed by any device, actually. And so over the years, we used the edge-type servers. Many of you have used ISA server in the past, and TMG, and we have UAG. But basically, the functionality to act as a reverse proxy. So if inside my corporate network, I have my web servers, my IIS servers with virtual directories that are publishing web services for data that I need to get out on the internet on my device. Something like UAG can securely publish that web service out to the internet. And, I often think about the differences in the way a VPN works versus publishing just little discrete services out. So if I'm a VPN, depending on how you build your network and how you partition off different subnets and things, you're basically delivering the entire network to the device. When you're doing it this way with like UAG and exposing web services and websites just on a site-by-site basis, you're basically just little pinpoints of information, and the app is the only thing that can talk to it. The whole device doesn't get to see all that stuff. So it's almost like a per-app VPN idea. But it's not just publishing it. So, we also, our servers do packet inspection, and they have just different levels of security, out at the edge in the DMZ or coming all the way back to the web servers. So this is how we do everything at Microsoft. So, if you remember, we used to call it publishing like extranets or things like that. So all of our products that we make, they're designed to be published this way. If you use Exchange Server, you're using this today. This is how we publish Exchange Server. This is how you get your email on like Outlook Web Access on the browser or on your phone. This is how you go to SharePoint sites. This is how you do everything. So that's how we do it, and makes it easier because the user wants things to just be fast and easy, and they just want it to be like the internet. I just want to go to a website. I just want to go get something. So that's kind of the idea there. And so on the intranet, I know we talk about BYOD all the time, and employees bringing all kinds of devices into the company, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. Now, one thing we can all agree on is no matter what we think about it personally, it's already happening. And a high percentage of employees at companies are already doing it. And they're coming in with every kind of device under the sun. So one way to mitigate this is lots of companies have a guest network, a visitor network, when someone from the outside comes for a meeting or something like that. Take that guest Wi-Fi network and expand it dramatically and make it almost as big as the rest of your Wi-Fi network in your company. But that guest network, it just sends devices straight to the internet. They are not allowed, they can't go against servers directly. They cannot see inside the company. So it sends no matter how much I love Windows Phone 8, I'm a mobile guy, and I firmly believe you should trust none of these devices. They should be treated as hostile devices. So send all of them out. Unless it's a domain-joined, locked-down, fully managed device, send them all out to the internet. And then have them come back in through that UAG kind of model where they're allowed to I'm only allowing you to get email and contacts or, calendar, things like that. Or maybe I'm publishing some apps, some web services for some, and you can control that. And you can control it based on the user auth and things like that. It's a good way to get started, addressing some of this BYOD stuff. The last thing I want to talk about is data leak prevention. So you've spent millions securing your network. You got the great devices that are locked down. You've built your firewalls, your DMZ, everything, and you think you've done everything you can. But there's one weak link in the chain, isn't there? It's your own employees, unfortunately, or partners, and that choose to take data inside your company and send it to someone else via email. Or they send it to themselves. They send it to a Gmail account or whatever. And so they take sensitive emails or attachments and send them out. And all that work you did and all that money you spent was for nothing because the employee can get the data out easily. So how do you stop that on these mobile devices? Well, we built in your Active Directories at your companies all have this rights management technology built into them. Windows Phone honors that rights management on those documents and emails. And so a phone cannot be used as a way to leak information out of your company. So the scenario to make sense for you is you're in your company and you're in your laptop in Outlook, and you're sending an email to someone, and you're sending them some sensitive information, or you have an attachment that's sensitive information, and you don't want them to forward it to the wrong place. So you have the capability with our rights management to mark in Outlook. You can say, do not forward, do not reply to all, do not save, cannot print. If you take a screenshot, you're just going to get a black screen. Our phones honor this. All our tablets, our laptops, all our devices honor this technology. And so you can do it with emails, your attachments, your documents in SharePoint. You could start doing data classification in your company. You know, at Microsoft, we have a high, medium, and low business impact is our data classification for different types of documents is what we do. And so information management's a big deal. Anybody who follows the device management world like I do, you know, people are already saying that just the managing the device, like a lot of the MDM players, is already old thinking, and that the future is just locking down the data and letting the device be free for the user, but encrypting and locking down data. So I see a lot of mobile device management companies that are trying to figure out this hard thing of locking down the data. We already have it. We've had it for years. We probably just don't do a good enough job of marketing the fact that we have it. And so it's very likely that you have it or your customer has it, and they just don't even know it. And it's just a matter of turning it on and enabling it. All right, so enough of security. That was a whole lot of security. So let's talk about MDM, some device management stuff. You certainly heard a lot from Brad this morning. So I'll start off here with kind of the baseline. So I do a lot of, part of my job, one of the other things I do, when I do mobile strategy consulting for a lot of companies, and a lot of chief information officers and IT directors and managers, they're kind of freaked out because they haven't figured out their mobile strategy yet. And they think that, they're going to have all kinds of problems. So the one baby step, the very first step, is something that's really easy if you haven't done anything. If you're using Exchange Server at your company, you know that Exchange ActiveSync is going to take care of just the most important things. I know there's lots of great device management packages out there on the market that have hundreds of policies that they enforce and things like that. Exchange ActiveSync doesn't do that, but it does the most important one. And it enforces the password, it makes the password change, it encrypts the device, it does remote wipe. Just the most important things, it does that. If you have Exchange ActiveSync in your company and people are getting email, it's very easy for you to just go turn those things on and enforce those simple policies so that you can sleep a little bit better at night, even though you haven't figured out all this other hard mobile stuff yet. So this is a great first step. And whether it's Exchange on-premise or if you're using Office 365 in the cloud, it works the same way. So another next step just above Exchange ActiveSync would be using Windows Intune. So this is our cloud-based mobile device management package. And so it does policy enforcement, kind of like Exchange ActiveSync, and it does software distribution. So those are kind of your two big things that you buy those packages for application management and MDM. So we take care of Phone 8, RT, Windows 8, Windows 7, XP, iPhones, iPads, Android devices. So all the most important devices that you need to take care of in your enterprise that your employees will be coming in with, you can use Intune to manage those. And again, though, I'll be very clear. It's what I would consider light device management. It's not heavy device management. It's not a package with 300 policies on it or something like that. It's light, so it's better for BYOD. Anyway, so Phone 8, it's simple. Really, it's that simple. Just checking a box to enroll the phone. And it applies the policies to the device, and then you get a portal. You probably saw that this morning with Brad Anderson. He showed portal that you get on Windows tablets and everything. You see all the enterprise apps. So we have that today. It's not as good as that one. It's we're increasing the capabilities of that portal, but we have a portal that runs on iOS as well, and so you can see all those devices and the corporate apps that you want. And then if you happen to be using System Center already, System Center can connect to Intune in the cloud, and you can manage, instead of using the HTML5 website to manage them, that you can use your existing Intune site. So I just wanted to give you a quick list, just so I was really clear, because literally Intune today, now we update Intune every 6 months, so we're iterating very fast. If there's some feature we're missing right now, there's a good chance we'll have it the next iteration. So about twice a year, we're having new versions come out. So Intune's only doing just a few more policies over and above Exchange ActiveSync. So I want to be really clear about that. And then it does reporting. And so information pulled back from the devices to see what's going on with those platforms. And so again, just limited reporting, and you can see what's going on. So if I think of application management, so this is an example of the portal site that you might be using with Intune on your device. Let me walk you through how all this works. It's almost similar. I don't know if is anyone in here a registered developer for Windows Phone or for the iPhone or anything like that? Okay. And so anyone who's a registered developer for an iPhone or Windows Phone, you go through a process. You submit some information about yourself, and they do a check on you to make sure you're a good person. I don't know, whatever. And then they create a certificate for you and everything, and it ties back to you so we know where the apps came from. So there's that vetting process. So imagine what we do for a big company is kind of like what we do for a developer. You talk with Microsoft, and we do this registration with Microsoft. And so we are working with Symantec and to do that vetting process, that checking of the company itself. And when everything goes okay there, then you get a certificate from Symantec, which kind of makes sense. Symantec owns VeriSign. And then this ID that you get for your enterprise. And so you're going to take that certificate and put it into your enterprise CA, your certificate authority. And so then you're going to digitally sign this token and the apps you build. And so you can imagine how this works. The phone will enroll, and the phone will get a token. That token is signed with that cert. And so then the apps you build, the private corporate apps you build for your company, those are also signed, and that kind of matches them together. So that it ensures that your apps can only run and launch and execute on devices that are enrolled. So they won't be able to run on someone else's device. And that's how you kind of have that private store. And so we're real flexible. You can use Intune, but we also have the capability where you could build your own private store yourself. And we have capability to show you how to do that. You can do it on an IIS web server, and you can deploy your own portal and things like that internally to have your own private app store that way as well. The last thing I want to talk about with Intune is it has that Chinese wall divides corporate from personal data, and so it's not interested in what your personal information is. And so when the employee comes into the company, you don't have to take your phone from them and install some kind of agent that runs in the background. It just starts working. And they enroll, and they get the portal, and they can choose what enterprise apps to use. Deploys those. You can set it to auto-update. If there's new versions of those enterprise apps, it'll auto-update those if you so choose. And then the inventory part of the inventory is you see what apps are installed and data that are on all the devices. It only returns back to your IT people the corporate data apps, not the personal. So you never see the personal stuff. And then if you want to unenroll them from the system, it's like a selective wipe. It's not a full remote wipe where it, takes the device back to its original factory state. It just uninstalls all the corporate policies that you enforced on there, and it gets rid of the corporate apps and data, and all your personal information is not touched. So it's a good separation there. So let's talk about communications and productivity. Less heavy stuff than security and device management. We had to get through that, though. So again, if you've used our phones, you kind of know the tile-based metaphor. Every phone obviously has the idea of contacts, right? Here, I can show you on my phone. Is this awake? Yeah, it's kind of awake. All right, it's not that awake. All right, so we do our contacts with the People Hub. You'll see their pictures, all their information. It's a great way to communicate with them. You can create groups, when you want to reach out to them with SMS or emails or things like that, or Skype. Above groups, we also created this new feature called Rooms. So if you have teams in your company or a virtual team you need to put together for a project, we make it easy, if everybody has Windows Phone 8, to create these rooms. And it's kind of like grouping, but it does more, where you can have a shared calendar, they can chat with each other, to-do lists, things like that. And so I use that with my team, actually. And so I see all the people on my team together, and we all work together, and it's very handy and nice to use. And then, of course, you have the option of tying all these to different social media, which was what we've had since Phone 7. So email. I truly believe we have the best email calendar experience. Having that power of Outlook on the phone is incredible. And so if I think about what we have today, we've got conversation view now in the email. We allow you to have multiple Exchange accounts on the platform. So we used to only do one. Now we can do multiple ones. You can have Gmail and Hotmail and Yahoo Mail and Pop and IMAP and all those types of, and you can all have them combined together, or you can break them all apart. And they're all color-coded. So if you see the calendar here, you can tell, the red might be my company Exchange server, and yellow might be Gmail, and blue might be Hotmail. And so you can either have all those together, both email and calendar, or you can break them all apart if you want to into separate folders, separate tiles, actually, so that they're not joined together. It just depends on what your personal preference is. And then speaking of kind of creating special tiles on the start screen, I don't know if I know a lot of people in Outlook will create individual folders in Outlook and set rules to send certain emails from certain people or different groups or distribution lists into those folders. We make it real easy for you to take advantage and create different tiles just for those folders that you're using in your desktop Outlook, so that you can see at a glance maybe special folders, special projects, things like that are coming in. And then, of course, we sync tasks, and developers can interact with this platform so that they can implement things with calendar and contacts. So voice and video. So we have Link and Skype. One's for business and one's for personal, even though you could use Skype for business too. There's nothing that prevents you from doing that. So kind of on the Link side, we just, a couple of months ago, we released Link 2013 for Windows Phone. I think we also released it for the iPhone, and it works great. And it's great for, and we have that in Office 365 in the cloud as well. And so it's great for corporate IM and knowing their presence, having video conferencing, all your conference calls. And then Skype, which is used all over the world. The interesting thing I find here, though, is the voice over IP and video call capability are actually part of the Phone 8 platform already. So those apps actually used what's on the phone to build themselves, as opposed to them adding that functionality to the platform. So what that means for you is if you're a developer, or if you need an app built in your company that uses voice over IP or video calls, it's very simple if you want those types of apps built for your company. Drag and drop, very simple to add those capabilities to your corporate apps so that people can stay in contact. And also, these apps don't have to be running in the foreground or anything for them to work. To get a Skype call, to get a Link call, or anything like that, it just works. It works just like a regular phone call. So there's no extra training for the user. If the user needs to make a call, they're using the same dialer. They can go from a contact and in the People Hub and see that they can call their phone number or call them on Link, whatever. So it's very simple, really well integrated. So part of the other thing about us having that chassis spec where we control the hardware everywhere is near-field communications. We mandate NFC on every single device from every operator, every OEM handset maker. So NFC is just, the whole idea of tap to send. You're just, 2 or 3 centimeters away from each other on the phone, and they can send data that way using NFC. They could also use it to create a faster or longer range connection. NFC natively may not be good enough. You might want to send a video from one phone to the other. So it could establish a Wi-Fi connection, for instance, and use the NFC to figure out how to do it and just automatically do it for you and send that data. And then, of course, you can interact with NFC tags. The idea about tap to pay, using NFC to pay for things. Different people, different handset makers will use different secure elements to make that work. We chose to use Secure SIM, so we work with the mobile operators to get that in there for you. And then again, like everything I've talked about, this is totally wide open and available for developers. We have a proximity API. Most of these things I talk about, all you have to do is go online to Channel 9, that video series I told you about that I did with Andy Wigley. We have a whole hour talking about NFC and working with that to send data. And that kind of segues well with the wallet. Our wallet's more like a wallet framework, I would call it. You build a kind of a backing kind of app that plugs into our wallet framework. For, if you're a Visa or MasterCard or whatever, or you're an airline miles card or loyalty or anything like that, and you plug into our wallet framework. Interesting thing is you can use push notifications to send down push updates to the wallet. So I know there's websites that every day, maybe they have a new deal of the day, like Woot or some of those other sites. You could actually do that in the wallet. You could, if you're selling something, or you want to get information out to your customers on a daily basis, we make it easy for you to push that information to them in the wallet. Maps, probably one of the best things we did was our tight partnership with Nokia. And so, one of the big benefits is getting the Nokia maps, the NavTech maps, right? Which is pretty much what everybody's trying to get anyway. And so it's good having it from the source. And so being able to have those offline maps, if you go back to the Lumia 900, and 800, things like that, back when it was on phone 7.5, you still got those maps. You could take them offline, your country, your province, your state, and not have to use, you wouldn't have to use your data connection to pulling map tiles down on the fly as you're driving your car. So it's great to have that experience, and because of our relationship with Nokia, they're also allowing that to be on competitor hardware. So the Nokia maps will be on HTC phones and Samsung and things like that as well. And then I know they renamed their drive to here, Nokia did, and so you can download that, and then you have a great experience, just that rivals the navigation system you might have in your car. I really, personally, it's kind of weird, but I remember when I downloaded the beta for that, because I have an HTC phone on Verizon, which is owned by Vodafone, and I thought the most interesting thing was, how in all navigation systems you can change the language and change the voice and male and female from different countries and stuff like that? Well, if you ever play with this, there's one, I think it's called California Surfer Dude. It's definitely worth it's hilarious. It makes traveling really funny, because if anybody remembers Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Spicoli, depending on how old you are, it'll bring it all home to you. And of course, we have a map control, and so we make it very simple for you to build mapping apps as a developer and add those capabilities. So Office, you get Office 2013 for free. It's built into the platform, just like you get Office 2013 when you get a Surface RT device, right? And I know we're all excited that we're going to get Outlook in 8.1 on the RT devices, which is sorely missed, I think. So you get Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Obviously we talked about Outlook, and you get OneNote. And then the great thing is, if you're using SharePoint through Office 365 in a private, we have that whole document management process going on. You can use the rights management. People can share documents and edit them together at the same time if you want to. If you're just a consumer, you get SkyDrive. You get 7 gig of data of storage in the cloud for SkyDrive. And so as a consumer, you can start creating Word documents and things, and it'll automatically synchronize your documents with your laptops and your tablets. And not only does it synchronize the document and make sure it also makes sure that wherever you left off, if I'm typing a Word document and then I left off on page 11, if I then open it on my phone, it'll be on page 11 on my phone. So it's synchronizing all your documents, and it's synchronizing the state of your documents as well. So it makes a great productivity tool. And then OneNote. People use it on laptops a lot. When I'm in meetings, I always see lots of people typing notes in it from meetings, and then people do it by hand on the phone. But it also can act as a dictaphone. And so it's speech-enabled, and you can just talk to OneNote, and it'll just record your voice, and or you could have it recording if you're in a meeting, sitting on the table, and then it uploads the voice, the savings of the voice up to the cloud, and then it transcribes that uses a speech-to-text engine, and it transcribes that in the cloud to text. And so then the next time you go on one of your other devices, it'll be waiting for you, and the whole text version of what you said to it or what was heard in the meeting will be there for you. So it's a really great productivity tool. So last but not least, let's talk about development. So Visual Studio 2012 is your one-stop shop for everything on the development side. So whether you're building Phone 7, Phone 8, Windows 8, RT, server, database, whatever, Visual Studio 2012 does everything for you. And so you get to use one tool for everything rather than multiple tools to target back-end systems and different device, things like that. So one interesting thing I'd like to point out here, the part where I talk about it being compiled in the cloud, you might be wondering why that's important. So if you're a developer, you know that the fastest programs you can write are the ones you create in C++. But you also know that it takes a lot longer to build C++ apps. And people want their apps faster. They want rapid development. So we have our rapid development tools that are doing VB and C#, and so you can build them quickly. But high-level languages like .NET and Java are just-in-time compiled languages. And so they're not always going to be as fast as C++, but you get the apps built faster. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is in this case, you actually do get a free lunch. You get to build the app fast, and then we compiled those to machine code in the cloud so that you have that C++ performance with the productivity of a rapid development tool. And also, even if you're not building a public app for a public store, if you just want to build a private app, we give you the capability to do that same machine code compilation as well for your internal apps, for your internal app store. So when you're building apps, business apps, consumer, you'll use our XAML technology. It's our XML that helps you define what everything looks like, the user interface, navigation. You can use VB and C# to build those things. If you want to build games, you can use C++ on the phone with Direct3D. Direct3D, that's the same technology we use for Xbox and for games on the PC. So you're not missing out on anything there. Remember, I talked about the chassis spec. It ensures that the devices have certain types of CPUs and GPUs to accelerate things so that you can do advanced 3D graphics. The mobile web. A lot of times you want to be multi-platform. You want to deliver the HTML5 web to devices and have it work everywhere. And which makes a lot of sense. You're in a BYOD world. People are coming in with every kind of device. It's hard to control. And so if you want to securely publish a website through UAG, like I talked about, with access rights controls and things like that on it, to an iPad, for instance, or whatever, HTML5 is a good way to go. And so we make it super simple to build HTML5 web applications in Visual Studio with debuggers for JavaScript and all the capabilities that we support in HTML5 in our browser. The developers can do that. So it's a great way to target other platforms besides our platform. So, targeting Safari browsers or Firefox or things like that, or Chrome. And then also, similar to the web, this is a growing trend. I see a lot of apps like this. This idea of a hybrid app, a web container. This is really popular. You might be using them and you don't even know it. There's a lot of skills out there in developers. A lot of people know how to build websites. Lots of people know HTML and JavaScript and CSS. So the idea of a hybrid web container is it's basically you start off with a native app, kind of just one screen. You didn't write any code yet. You drag a web browser control right on there. And then the rest of the code, instead of writing C# or VB, or instead of writing Java for Android or Objective-C for iPhone, you write HTML and JavaScript instead. And so all those pages, the web pages and everything, they are actually on storage on the device, and they're loaded that way. And so this allows you to leverage your HTML skills that you may have in your enterprise or consultants that you're using. And so we make it very simple. We have a template. So tomorrow morning at 8:30, I'm going to do a whole session on HTML5. And I'll finish up. I'll give you a quick view of how we do hybrid apps. I've seen statistics that says upwards of 60% of all apps in the different app stores are using some form of hybrid web container technology and displaying some or all of their app using HTML5. So it's very interesting. So databases. Not everybody understands why they might want a database on their phone. but I certainly do because I've been on those giant projects when you're building, enterprise apps for package delivery or truck drivers delivering, whatever it is. There's so many scenarios where it's good to have a mobile database on the device for larger amounts of data. And so we have SQLite, and we support that on big Windows 8 and RT and the phone. And SQLite's the most popular open source database in the world. And it's used on iPhones and Android. And so you may have apps that you're using it because you have heavier storage requirements and you need tables and rows and columns and indexes for offline data. So we have great support for SQLite. We have SQL CE, which is our database that we've had going all the way back to the Pocket PC days. So we still have that, and you can use that as well on our platform. And then if you don't have that great of data, but you still want kind of that SQL type working with tables kind of idea, but you don't have enough data that you actually need to use a database, we make it very simple when you make your calls to web services and you're returning rows of data from a table, for instance. We make it really easy to work with that stuff in memory, and we have our language integrated query built into .NET that allows you to query a collection of objects as if you were querying a database table and getting the answers back using SQL-like syntax. So a lot of options here for your data storage needs. So here's my real crazy picture. Has anyone ever heard of a MEEP before? All right. Nobody. Excellent. I'm going to do a whole session just on this slide on Thursday. And it's probably my most important session, actually, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the whole reason we're doing mobile enterprise isn't all that other stuff I told you about. All that other stuff is plumbing, or it's I need to secure it, and I need to do this. But come on, the whole point of all this is you have apps and data you need to get out to the device. And then you're going to do all this other stuff around it to secure it and manage it and everything. But this is the core. So a lot of people, when they think about what's the difference between building a consumer app and building an enterprise app, and because there's a lot of similarities. Most of the things might be identical in some cases. But in my experience, the big difference is that you might be spending 60 or 70% of your time on the back-end system, and maybe only 30% of your time is devoted to building the actual app, which surprises some people. They think I'm building apps. I'm on the phone the whole time. But so real quickly, and I'll go in depth on this on Thursday, this is a Gartner thing. Does everybody know who Gartner is? The analysts that CIOs buy their reports and helps them make decisions? Okay. So Gartner has the magic quadrants for everything these days, and one of them is this mobile enterprise application platform. Here's the basic idea. So right now, mobile is the number 2 thing. The CIO is on their list of most important things, I think, behind big data, BI right now. And inside that, one of the big imperatives is I want to get data from any back-end system that I have out to any device. I need to unlock the value of my back-end databases or my SAP or Dynamics or whatever, or Tibco message buses or things like that, and I want to empower my people in the field, my employees with phones, with that data. And so there are different products on the market, these MEEP products, and so all I'm going to talk about on Thursday, and what I want to show you here, is that if you own all this Microsoft technology, if you own things like SQL Server and the UAG and IIS, a lot of things that are pretty common, you have the building blocks to build this all today, and you might just not know it yet. And so the gist of it really quickly, with SQL Server, a lot of times when you think about adapters, you probably think of BizTalk, right? But SQL Server gives you the ability to do some things that you can't do in BizTalk. So SSIS adapters talking to all these different types of back-end systems, whether they're databases or SAP or things like that, pulling the data together, staging it. We have the ability to use replication to scale out, horizontally partition the databases for large scale-out scenarios. Because, lots of people just think of scaling out their web servers, and they think that's all they have to do, and they're all pointing at one database. Well, that doesn't work after a while. You'll run out of gas. So we talk about scaling out the servers at every level, caching, in-memory caching, distributed caching across servers. The best, fastest database query you can make is the one that you don't have to make, right? If my web service call calls for information and it's in memory cache, then I get the answer like that instead of having to go to the database and get it. So all those things and the ability to securely publish that out to any device is something that you have if you have these basic Microsoft technologies today. And so anyway, I'll go in depth on that on Thursday. Internet Explorer 10. So this is great. We got the real thing down on the device. We've always had different kind of modified subset versions of the browser on our devices in the past. So IE10, having it be fast and safe at the same time. So back to the chassis specification, we enforce the GPUs that are used. So we have hardware acceleration through the GPU, graphics processors, to accelerate the rendering of the HTML5 and accelerate the rendering of images, or a video on a video tag, or 2D drawing on a canvas tag in HTML5. We hardware accelerate all that. And then we make it even faster. We have a just-in-time JIT-compiled JavaScript engine now that is on the phone. So when you're building serious web apps, not just pages and sites, but real apps that work like native apps, we just-in-time compile that JavaScript, because JavaScript's the language of the web, right? So this is how you blur the lines between native and web. And so IE10 does this for us. I think back in time of building native apps over the years, over the last decade or more, why did we build native apps instead of web apps? Sometimes it was because the native app was richer and could do more, but most of the time it had to do with wireless connectivity, actually. It was really simple. You know, I couldn't do a web app because I'm driving a truck and the internet goes away, the wireless data network goes away, and I have to always be connected. And so I built a native app. Well, now with HTML5, things like app cache, I don't know if you're familiar with app cache, but it's like a file. It's part of the new HTML5 specification that basically lists all the web pages, and it pre-downloads all the pages and JavaScript files and style sheets and images, and then it gets it on the device, and then the network could disappear, and I can keep using my website on my phone. I could put my phone in airplane mode, and it would keep working. So there's that offline type of application that we normally reserve for native. And then IndexedDB. I talked about using databases to store data. I'm calling that crazy picture from the last slide, the web services pulling that data. I need to put it somewhere. Well, we have IndexedDB, which is part of the W3C spec for HTML5. It's a database that starts at 50 meg, and you can create indexable databases in the browser. And you can close the browser, and the data will still be there. You could reboot the phone. The data will still be there. So now the browser is a real good platform, and you may find in the enterprise that more and more, maybe 50% of the time, building a web app might be good enough. I mean, think about it. In my experience, most every app, in the enterprise, most every app does the same thing. I mean, everybody, they're all special, but they grab data from some back-end database or back-end system, and they download the data, and you have it on the device, and it tells you where to go and what to do and things like that, and you see it, and then you capture new data, and maybe you manipulate data, and then you send it back to the server. That's probably 90% of all enterprise apps, maybe 100%. They're all, there's lots of extra things they do in between, but that's how they all work. You may find that with the web, with HTML5, in most cases, those kinds of scenarios you could do with the web if you want to. So remember I told you about the isolated chamber, containerized around the apps? The browser is also in a container. So the browser is secure from the rest of the platform. So even if you could download malware or a virus in the browser, it couldn't attack the rest of the device because the browser is in its own shielded container. So, but we don't do plugins anymore. We have Smart Screen Filter, which blocks all these websites that have malware that want to come download. So we do a lot of things to protect you from bad things on the web. We send out these do not track requests for privacy if the website's honor it so that they're not tracking you everywhere. And then we have DataSense, which is a hardware-based compression system we use with different mobile operators. And so it compresses up to 45% of the data if you enable it. And so the great thing, if you're thinking about the enterprise, your company or your customer, how can you save them money? Well, if they normally pay so much money for a 1 gig data plan, maybe they could use less money for a smaller data plan and save lots of money because this compression allows up to 50% more data to go over the wire. And so it's a great way to save money. And last but not least, just to give you an idea where we are with our store right now, we're over 145,000 apps. This is actually out of date. We're growing at way more than 300 apps a day. We're over 190 countries now. The 70 languages, full right-to-left support in all our languages. We've added for Phone 8 this idea of in-app purchasing. You know, a real popular way for apps on the internet these days in app stores is have them be free and then have in-app purchases for other things inside the app. That's a real popular mechanism. So that kind of wraps it up. You saw what we did with the chassis specification to get these new hardware innovations on all these platforms, how to secure the data, how to manage the data, how to communicate, whether it's phone call or link or Skype, whatever, app dev, and HTML5. And so that's kind of your overview of Windows Phone 8. And like I said, throughout the rest of the week, we're going to go in depth on all these things that I touched on. So I definitely encourage you to go to a bunch of those. So what I want to do now is, did everybody get a survey to fill out for a free phone? Have you filled it out yet? So here's what we need to do. Whoever's going to pick those up from you, because I need to make sure somebody gets a phone, because I've got a phone here. Because it wouldn't be a phone session if I didn't give away a free phone, right? Of course. That's why you're here. You've got to get a phone. So I have a Lumia 920. Awesome phone. So those gentlemen back there are collecting all your that you filled out. While they're doing that, I'll just kind of breeze through here and let you kind of see what's coming up on the Windows Phone track. So the session after this one, we'll talk about, it's kind of a high-level developer session, just to kind of, it's kind of like the one I did, but high-level for all the capabilities of developer. And then we're going to start, you'll see different IT Pro, mostly IT Pro sessions, you know, integration sessions. The one tomorrow morning I'm going to do on HTML5 and hybrid apps, networking, sharing code across big Windows and Windows Phone, a lot of security stuff. Thursday, so my session at 10:15 in the morning, large-scale enterprise mobile apps. So that's that weird, crazy picture of the cloud that I showed you. That's what that session is. Learning how to add speech to your apps. We have a great speech engine. Remember, we have real Windows running on the phone. So it means we get the real speech engine. So we don't always have to go to a server like Siri to get answers. We still do that, but we also can do a lot of things on the phone without that. And Friday, another great session in the morning. I mentioned SQLite. Andy Wigley's doing a great session on that. So while we're getting these gathered together, I'm going to ask a question for the tablet book. If you're interested in building enterprise apps that work in the hybrid cloud, that do automatic data synchronization, it's very simple to use. And so only raise your hand if you're actually interested in a tablet app book. And so I'm going to ask you the question, but don't blurt out the answer. To raise your hand if you think you know it, and I'll call on you. So who remembers the code name of the secret project by Microsoft Research to get NT running on ARM? You got it. Congratulations. You get the book. Well done, sir. All right. Woo. All right. Are we close? Do we have everything? Almost? Okay. Because somebody needs a phone really bad. So I don't want to have to keep this. We got one more? All right. We don't want to leave anybody out. Do we have our automatic Las Vegas shuffling machine here?
Shuffling machine. All right. Anybody else?
Just throw them at him like a Chinese star. Oh, here we go. Here, let me get that from you. I don't want anybody to be left out. Okay, is that it? All right. So I'm not looking. Okay. So the big winner of the Lumia 920. Let me make sure I say this right. Is that F-A-T-I-H?
I think so.
Fatish? Am I saying it right?
Last name C-H, is that C-H-A-N?
Is it C-H-A-N, C-I-A? Anybody in here? I know I'm doing, oh, yes, you, come on up. Congratulations. I apologize profusely for not being able to say your name right, but I hope I can make it up to you by giving you a phone. Congratulations. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it, and have a great week. And please remember to fill out your evals. Thanks so much for coming.